Hello, welcome to my first podcast. I have to be really honest and say I'm really nervous, so I'm probably going to speak too fast, but I will try not to. You're probably thinking, why is this crazy nervous woman choosing to do a podcast? It's important to me. I want to share all the amazing and terrifying and crazy things about homeschooling. I've been a homeschool mum for over 10 years now. It has been a wild ride. We've had so many ups and so many downs. And I think, I've made a lot of mistakes through our homeschooling journey as well. And I feel like a lot of the mistakes I made could have been avoided if I knew what I know now. So I'd like to share information with other homeschoolers, in particular families just getting started now. I know it's recently become quite popular. I feel like homeschooling's always been more popular than people realize, but it's certainly a lot more popular now than it was 10 years ago when we first started. Throughout my podcast episodes, I'm going to be interviewing other families with a big focus on families who are at the other end of it now, like us. So you can see what has worked with children who wanted to go to university, children wanting to get apprenticeships, start their own businesses. I want to interview, I've actually got some very exciting interviews coming up with some children who I believe are just so successful and doing so wonderfully, and just talk about their homeschooling journey and what worked for them, because of course what works for one family isn't going to work for every single family. The whole point of homeschooling is to tailor everything to your needs and your children's needs. So I'm very excited about that, and hopefully I'll settle in and I won't ramble too much. So from today's podcast, really, I just wanted to introduce myself, share a little bit about my story over the last 10 years, and just explain why this podcast is so important to me. As I said, it was about 10 years ago, my youngest child, and they've given me permission to discuss everything. I certainly wouldn't be chatting about them without their permission, but I won't be giving away personal details, of course. My youngest child, they did kindy. They actually really struggled throughout kindy. They were very tired. They found it very boring, but also quite overwhelming. I think their biggest struggle was that the teacher's main focus was on trying to make sure all the kids knew how to get across the monkey bars and trying to make sure all the kids could jump certain distances in hula hoops and things like that, whereas Riley really struggled with anything physical. At that stage, we weren't aware that they had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, chronic fatigue syndrome, generalized pain disorder, and they still had undiagnosed autism at that stage as well. So to Riley, being in this situation where they were just overwhelmed and exhausted, and just all this focus was on what they couldn't do, whereas by the time Riley was 2 years old, they were reading confidently, weren't guessing words. They knew all the letter sounds. At 2, they were writing their own name. By 4, Riley was reading Dr. Seuss books very confidently, very happily, would carry books with them and was always reading, and started writing little stories. So by the time they got to kindy at 4.5, they were confidently writing paragraphs, and not so great on math. That's just, we never really bothered so much because they weren't really interested in that. We really encouraged what they were interested in. So very intellectually and academically bored, but also just feeling like they couldn't do anything right because they couldn't keep up with the physical side of things, and that was constantly being pointed out to them. So I decided that particular kindy wasn't working for us because it just felt very negative. So at that stage, my oldest child, she had moved schools as well. We went from a private school to a public school. And she was doing much better there. She was feeling more confident. She was starting to make friends. She wasn't really getting into, my oldest daughter was getting in a lot of trouble at this particular school. So, and obviously we worked with the teachers and we were doing whatever we could, but nothing was working. and it just felt like a lot of money to be spending to have a miserable child. So we moved to a different school, put in different strategies in place, and she was doing quite well. So we thought, okay, we'll put both the kids in the same school. This will be easier, because it was very hard for me going to work and driving to 2 different schools and dealing with all these problems at 2 different schools. So yeah, within a couple of weeks of Riley starting pre-primary, the teachers called us in for a meeting, or called myself in for a meeting, because my husband works full-time and wasn't really involved in any of the school stuff. He couldn't be, he just had to be at work, so it was always fell onto me. So, you know, when you get the call, I was like, oh, we need to talk. I'm like, I don't want to do this. What now? Because it had just been issue after issue after issue after issue. But they actually came in and said, look, we think Riley's not going to want to do pre-primary. We think they need to skip at least 1 year. We've been doing all these tests. We've been talking to them a lot. They're just too advanced to be in this class with children who are still learning their letters and learning how to write their name. So long story short, there was a lot of tests. There was a lot of meetings, because I was initially extremely uncomfortable with the idea of skipping a grade, in particular because Riley is very, very small. You know, at this stage, they're in pre-primary, and they were still wearing size 0 and size 1 Kmart shorts, because they're so small. Like, we had to get the smallest size T-shirt from the uniform shop, and it was down to their knees. So that was always going to be an issue, their size, being in a classroom full of much bigger kids and much bigger chairs, much bigger tables. Also, going from kindy straight to year 1, really you miss a lot of the play-based learning, so that was a concern. But this school, they were fantastic. They were very supportive, and I always said all out throughout our homeschooling journey, if something changed and I had to put Riley back into the school system, we would have gone back to the same school. The school was not the problem. That really, I don't know that there was a lot of problems, but I don't think anything is to blame. Certainly the teachers were amazing. A lot of people think, oh, you homeschool because you hate teachers. No, I have friends who are teachers. I love teachers. I think they're underpaid. I think they're overworked. I think they're not supported. I think they're working in a system that is continuously adding more and more and more pressure, and not offering any relief, not offering enough support, not offering enough pay. So no, I absolutely don't hate teachers. I admire them. And after homeschooling for 10 years, I have a huge amount of respect for teachers who come up with lesson plans and keep all of their kids engaged and teach all of their kids, because it's hard just keeping one child engaged. So yeah, no, we like teachers. This isn't going to be a podcast where I'm verbally bashing teachers. That's not going to happen. Now I forgot what I was talking about. Okay, yeah, so year 1 didn't go so great. There was a lot of bullying issues, which I'll talk about in another podcast. Again, Riley was still undiagnosed with all these issues. I knew something was wrong, but it's very hard getting diagnoses. It took a very long time to work out what was going on. All I knew was that my child was crying before school every day. They would hold themselves together at school, so the teachers weren't seeing the same thing I was seeing. Then when we come home from school, there would be meltdowns. Then they would fall asleep. I would literally have to wake Riley up for dinner, just to get some food into them. And then there would be homework, and then it would be back to bed because they were exhausted. And prior to that, they'd been doing a lot of dancing. We were in dance classes. Slowly we dropped down dance classes till there was none left. They were doing drama, and we had to quit drama. Just everything that they loved doing for fun had to stop because they were so exhausted just from being at school. And then with the bullying issues and the physical difficulties, often they couldn't hear what was going on, and at that stage we didn't know they had autism. So obviously they were in sensory overload and struggling, and no one was aware of what was going on. I just knew something wasn't right. So then the holidays came around, very chilled, and then we started year 2, but within about 2 weeks of year 2, Riley was just going, I just don't want to go to school. I just can't go to school. And then being the inquisitive child that they've always been, they came to me and said, why don't we homeschool? And I just thought, oh, that's not actually something I thought about. But yeah, Google. Children have Google. Um, yeah. So I thought, you know what, why not look into it? And yeah, long story short, we started homeschooling within about 4 weeks from there because it took a while to get the paperwork done. I'm going to cover another podcast for if you're in WA and you want to start homeschooling, just to show you exactly the tips, all the things you've got to do, because it is a process. But we're very lucky in WA. It is a very simple process. It really didn't take very long. It was, I think, for me, getting my head around, okay, well, I work. Plus, at that stage, I was I had set up a company. I was running a company, and it felt like it was just at that point where things were finally looking up. I was finally getting clients. I'd put in the years of hard work. I'd put in the years of investing all my money from my part-time job. Everything was just getting to that point where it felt like, yes, things are about to go really, really well. So and there was a lot of pressure there on me as well. And then suddenly I had, well, school's not working. I can't keep my child in school when that's not working. And my oldest daughter, she was just finding trouble, unfortunately. Yeah, I think it was really hard on her when our youngest skipped a grade, because suddenly she went from being the vibrant, fun, wonderful person that she was to everyone going, oh, you're the one whose sister skipped a grade. And that was not good for her. So it was this constant juggling act, trying to do what's best for both children. And so when I made the decision, I was like, okay, Riley's going to homeschool. It was to my oldest daughter, okay, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay at school? Do you want to come home? What do you want to do? And at that point, she decided to homeschool as well. But she actually only homeschooled for 2 years. It was not for her, but we homeschooled her until high school. So then she started high school at the public high school, and she went through there until year 10, where she then went to TAFE. And TAFE seemed like the best fit for her. So back to homeschooling. Yeah, so at that point, I think it took me a long time to get around. And I'm going to tell you already, I know I'm going to save this for a much bigger podcast, but intense pressure when we started. It was this, so many people just outright saying, well, you can't homeschool. I never got further than year 10, and I struggled. I was getting C's and D's and really, really struggling from year 9 onwards. I had my own personal things I was dealing with. School was not for me. I really, really struggled. I was only at school to escape. So then for me to be then saying, hey, I'm going to teach my kid everything and everything's going to be great. Of course, everyone was like, you didn't even do school yourself. How are you going to teach a child? And it was this expectation that I would fail. And then this pressure to keep working, this pressure to be the perfect wife, this pressure to keep the house clean. And at that time, I also had, and I obviously still do, but it was undiagnosed, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease, and rheumatoid arthritis. And they were all undiagnosed. So all I knew is that I was always exhausted. I was always in agony. I couldn't sleep because I was so stressed. Something had to give. And there was just this intense pressure to be perfect at everything. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you're feeling this crazy pressure to be perfect at everything and keep working, keep making sure you cook everything from scratch every day, grow your own fruit and veggies, just do everything and be perfect, you can't. It is not possible. Something's got to give, and you've got to prioritize what's more important to you. And at that point, I went, okay, well, I have to quit my job because I've got to be home. So that was fine. I could run the company from home, and I did for the first year. It turned out to be a very big mistake, but I did try holding on to that company for the first year just to keep a little bit of my independence. It didn't work for me. Maybe it will work for you. Everything, you know, different things work for different people. But you can't. You've got to pick what's perfect for you. And then if there's negative people, ignore them. If I had listened to them, we wouldn't be where we're at today. And we fast forward to now we've been homeschooling for 10 years. Riley is 16 years old. They're currently in their second year of uni. They're such an amazing child. Both my kids are such amazing kids because we had that flexibility to do what they needed to do. Amelia needed to be in school. That suited her. That was good for her. Riley could not go to school. They needed to learn at home. And they're such a passionate kid. They're doing great. Obviously, they still have their disabilities and the chronic illnesses, and they have huge challenges that they face, which a lot of teenagers don't face. So obviously there are challenges there. But they're such a good kid and they're doing so well. And I'm so proud. And I'm so glad that we chose to homeschool. It was absolutely the best decision for us. I'm so glad I didn't listen to everyone who said we were going to fail, said I could never teach my child, said I would be destroying their chance of getting into university. They started uni at 14. So did not destroy their chance of getting into uni. They published their first book at 12. And they just have these massive goals. And at the moment, we're training an assistance dog. I'll do some podcasts on that because that's fun and crazy. It's crazy. We love it. Yeah, and people were saying, oh, your kid's going to be so weird and antisocial. Like, to be honest, we're weird and antisocial anyway. Like, why go to a school where you made to feel like you're weird and antisocial when you can build your small group of friends who have the same interests as you, have similar goals to you, and support each other. These kids, they support each other. You know, by comparison to all the kids in the school system where I felt they were all competing with each other for the awards and they were all competing with each other for the better grades. It felt very competitive and, yeah, very much like they're all against each other, but then still trying to be friends. Whereas in the homeschool community, I found all these kids really, really support each other and celebrate each other, and there's that genuine connection. So yeah, 10 years on, Riley doesn't have hundreds and hundreds of friends, but they do have a small group of wonderful, amazing friends that they've been friends with really since the beginning. So, and they're definitely going to be lifelong friendships. They even though they're all doing different things with their tertiary studies now, they're all always talking to each other, always supporting each other, always celebrating each other's little successes and big successes. And it's so, so beautiful. So, yeah, if you are, so I guess the main message that I want to send from this first podcast is if you are unsure about homeschooling and your child is going through some struggles at school that you don't feel can be resolved at school, because some things just can't be resolved at school. Sometimes you need to step out of the system. Or if you're feeling lost or stuck or you don't know, just stop worrying about what other people think. Block it all out. You need to worry about what is better for your child and what is better for you, because that's all that matters. That's why you do this. Everything else will just fall into place or you make it work. But you need to block everyone else out, block all the negativity out. Don't worry about what people are going to say. People are going to say dumb shit anyway. Oh, sorry, I have a potty mouth. That's going to happen. Yeah, you need to do what's best for you. You cannot please everyone. Your number one priority is your child. And whether that's being in the institutionalized school system or being homeschooled, whatever, your number one priority is your child. And more so than their education, their mental and physical health comes first. So if there are issues that need to be addressed, you need to address them before you even worry about their education. Yeah, the education is a huge priority, but is not as important as their health. Yeah, and I guess the other main message I want to send is that you're not alone. My God, I felt so isolated and alone for that first 2 years of homeschooling because I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know how to find the groups. I didn't know what I was doing. And because I was under such intense pressure to just not fail and to be perfect, I didn't feel that I could reach out. So I was incredibly alone and isolated. There was no support. everything had fallen onto me to do. And I don't want you to go through that. And obviously when I was that stressed, I made my children stressed, which is ridiculous because the whole point of homeschooling was to relieve the stress. So it was so counterproductive and counterintuitive. So I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. If you are feeling lost or stuck, I want you to reach out. I want you to find your tribe, and I want you to make homeschooling fun and exciting and amazing, because it really is, and it can be if you let it. It's just finding your way. So yeah, that's my first podcast. Hopefully I didn't ramble and talk too fast. I probably did. In the next podcast, I'm going to just talk about some of the mistakes I made in the first 2 years, because I don't want you to make the same mistakes with me, and talk about some of the things we did that really, really, really worked, because I want you to be set up for success. So yeah, try not to focus on the negative. I try to focus on the positive, but let's preempt the pitfalls so that we don't get stuck when we do find them, because there are going to be challenges. Of course, there's challenges with everything. So yeah, help you get prepared with that. And then I've got some really cool interviews lined up with some kids who have got into university very young, got their qualifications quite young, and are just having huge successes, which I really want to share that, so you can see, hey, no, we're not preventing our children from furthering their education. We're allowing them to do it at their own pace. So yeah, that's my first podcast. I hope you like it. If you enjoy, please subscribe so that you can get notified when the next one comes up. And I'm going to do one a week. And I also have our website, Facebook page, and Instagram that I will link below. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful day.